All right. Well, we'll open up first with a short statement from Coach Johnson. If you could talk a little bit about Coach Woody and his arrival here, and then Coach Woody, if you could follow Coach Johnson with a quick introduction, and then we'll open it up for questions. So.
Well, good morning. I think we're awfully excited about the new track that we're about to engage on defensively. I think that Nate has an outstanding background, outstanding reputation, and certainly he's had a heck of a career to this point. I think he brings a lot of positives to our program. I think it's a type of defense that our young men are going to enjoy playing in and have fun. And as we work to get this thing installed and finish the rest of the coaching staff, I think that everybody around the program is looking forward to it and excited to move forward.
Coach Woody?
Certainly happy to be here. Coach Johnson for giving me this opportunity. Just, Georgia Tech is always a place that I've held in high regard. My wife is from not far from here in Carrollton, Georgia, so it's always a place that I thought I'd really like to work at. Looking forward to getting started here and hopefully building on a defense that gets after it and just has an awful lot of fun playing out there, whether it's practice or games. Guys that are having fun, generally are going to be successful.
Okay. We'll open up for questions. If you could, please raise your hand so you get a microphone. And also, so Coach Woody can begin putting faces with names, if you can introduce yourself and the organization that you represent.
Good morning, Coach. Rod McKenzie. I'm with GoJackets.com on the 247 network. I wonder if you could maybe just explain to us what your defensive philosophy is.
I think one of the things that I've tried to do is make sure that don't have guys that just eat up space. I think that over the years I've found that offensive linemen, I guess, were the guys that I wanted to try to attack, and that defensively, if I could get guys that had speed and quickness, those guys were able to disrupt plays before plays were able to get underway. If we can get guys that at the defensive line position that can penetrate and make plays, then that's tackles for a loss. If you get linebackers making plays, you still got a chance, but those an offense can still stay on schedule. And then if your secondary is making all those tackles, then you're going to be behind schedule as far as the downs go. So what we wanted to do was get guys that could play certain blocks and beat those blocks and penetrate and get into the backfield quickly. I spent a lot of time, trying to get I guess the quality of athleticism right, for each position. And I've been at places where it wasn't always the easiest to recruit, but we were able to find the guys that we needed and make it happen.
Hi, Coach. Welcome to Atlanta. I'm Kevin Taylor of Taylor Made Sports with Kevin Taylor.
Thank you, Kevin.
How you doing?
Good.
Well, great to have you. And kind of just following up on your last answer about recruiting, of course, you've got some schools now that are in heavy competition, with Georgia State. How do you, go into that, and also the players that you already have? Kind of just talk about, your evaluation as well as, trying to find those players going up against other schools and knowing what they've been able to do on the national level.
Right now I'm in the process of evaluating our players and seeing what positions are best for them. I always want to find out from them what it is that they want to do. I thought a long time ago I had a good buddy that was playing with me, and he was playing defense, and he was doing really good. He started as a freshman. But after the year, he wanted to transfer because he wanted to be an offensive guy, and he was a good one. But I don't even think the coaches realized that he wanted to be on the other side of the ball. And he left. So I've always tried to do this. I've always tried to ask the guys, where is it that you want to play, and then try to show them the best place that they would fit in the defense and go from there. I was a guy that played defensive back my first couple of years, and then found that it was to my advantage to be an outside linebacker in the defense. And I didn't want to do that at first, but I had some success at that outside linebacker position. I realized, having gone through that situation, where it's a little bit difficult for some of the players to make some moves. So I just want to get feedback from them. I want them to let me know what it is that they want to play, and then try to show them the structure of our defense and how they can be successful at certain positions. As far as recruiting goes, we're looking for a certain type of guy, and I don't know that most of these other defenses are looking for the same guy all the time. I don't mind taking an inch or two off of a defensive lineman if he can giddy up and go. I don't mind taking a tenth off of a linebacker's 40 time if he can process it quickly. So there's certain positions need to have different qualities that we hit on. So they may not be the same type of player that we're recruiting against, and if we are, it's okay, because this is a heck of a school, and I think we can win our battles recruiting.
When you look at the outside linebacker position and looking through the players that are here now, do you see any of maybe like the bigger secondary guys that could move up to that outside linebacker position?
Rod, right?
Yes.
All right, that's no CTE. That's good to go. Outside linebacker position, I think. This guys love to play outside linebacker in my defense. Guys coming off the edge, blitzing the quarterback, making plays, in the backfield. And it's not always, you don't always get to do that, but you get to do it enough to where, hey, it's fun to go out there to practice, and it's fun to line up in games doing that. You can get guys that have played. I've had guys that have played safety for me that have moved up and played the outside linebacker position and loved it. I've got guys that have played safety and outside linebacker in the same game, and executed it very well. So I think flexibility is what I'm trying to give myself. And in today's game, where you have injuries, and now the second or third guy just isn't quite as good, at that point in time, you want to get the best 11 on the field. So being able to cross-train some guys at some positions has helped me in the past. So I think that outside linebacker position is one that we can draw from, whether it's a guy that may have been a guy that played with his hand down in high school, or it could have been a guy that played defensive back in high school, and or likewise played inside or outside backer. It's just that speed and quickness, and just being able to determine run or pass quickly.
Kelly Quinlan, I work for JacketsOnlineRivals.com.
What's up, Kelly?
Hey, this is actually for both of you guys. Kind of how far back does your relationship go? I know you coached against Coach Johnson when he was at Southern, and I guess kind of how did you two hook up?
Surprised the heck out of me. He used to beat the dog out of us, So when he asked me if I'd be interested in this job, I couldn't believe it. I thought he was joking. But we had we were in the same conference for a few years, and there was I don't know, Coach. Do you remember? Was there a game that was even close? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. My memory, I may have CT. I don't know. My memory. It wasn't a fair fight.
No, but I've always known of Coach Johnson, and was always impressed with the type of offense that he ran, because, geez, man, if you got an offense that can run the football, then defensively you're going against that in practice. Your guys are going to do a good job of fitting the front as far as stopping the run. If you can't stop the run, you're not going to win football games. You won't win championships. So being able to see the success that he's had, running the football, and always the speed that the offense had was tremendous in attacking the edge and perimeter as well. So I always thought that you can get better defensively at something that's extremely important, stopping the run and getting physical with your defense. So and then likewise, if you weren't a fast defense, you weren't going to catch up to the attack out on the perimeter. You had to find ways to get an alley player there. You got to be able to force it, and then you got to be able to defend the pass off of it too. So I think that's fun for me. Just being able to participate against that in practice, and see the guys, get better each year and as the season goes on. But you got to be able to use the techniques against the triple option in practice and be able to flip that switch into the techniques that they need to defend the other teams that you play against, the other type of offenses. And I think that with my experience, against the triple, when I worked at Wofford for so long, I feel like that was something that we always kept at the top of our list. Should we use this, technique to coach, or this reading progression? And it was always for the betterment or development of our players as the season went on. And I don't think there was many years where our defenses didn't get better as the season went on. So I'm looking forward to working here against this type of offense. And Coach Johnson does as good as anybody.
This is for both coaches. Where are you at right now with filling the remaining defensive spots on the staff?
We're working at it. I think that probably in the next week and a half, we'll be there with our staff. But we're working on it as we speak.
Coach Wade, John Cooper, RamblinRec.com. I'm sure you hate losing as much as Coach Johnson does, otherwise he probably wouldn't even have thought about you. What are your thoughts about the challenge ahead as a competitor of facing a schedule like you're going to face week in, week out, going from a Miami to a Clemson and back-to-back weeks and just things like that?
I do hate losing, but I'm not sure that anybody hates losing more than Coach Johnson. But the schedule is it is what it is. You look forward to playing against the best, That's what players want to do. They want to go out there and they want to be successful. You, as a coach, want to give those guys everything they can. Heck, nobody wants to screw up out there, and nobody wants to go out there and play, schools that just can't compete with you every game. You want to be challenged as a player. You want to go out there and play the best. Coaching-wise, same thing. You want to sit in that staff room and work with guys to come up with a great game plan that the guys can be successful with, and then go out there and when you win, it means something. Now I'm not saying that you can go out there and play against a national championship, national champion every game. Guys need a chance, somewhere along the line to I guess regroup or whatever. But we got enough competition in the ACC to where if we win, we get. I think we can get into the playoffs, and that's got to be the goal for anybody,
Well, Coach Johnson, this question is for you. Will you have some input on the defensive schemes on a week-to-week basis, or will Coach Woody have total control?
Well, I don't know that anybody ever has total control, but I always try to treat coaches the same way that I would want to be treated if I were running an offense or defense, in that I have complete confidence in Nader. I wouldn't have hired him to put in his defensive scheme. I'm not going to hire somebody that runs a certain scheme or a certain program and then bring them in here and say, no, you can't do that. You have to do something else. And that's the way I've been my entire career. I think if you look back as a head coach, I was 5 years at Georgia Southern. I had the same defensive coordinator for 5 years. At Navy, I was there for 6 years. I had the same defensive coordinator for 6 years. You know, there's a thing that we've changed a lot of coordinators. I was looking, the schools around us have changed more than we have. I mean, I've been here, this will be my 11th season, and I guess we've gone from Dave to Al to Ted to now Nate, but that's not that unrealistic on this level. And I think that each guy that's been here has had the opportunity to run their scheme and do what they want. Now, if we're out there doing something that I deem is not so crazy or not best for the program, then certainly as a head coach, I'm going to step in and say, hey, I don't know why we're doing this, or take a look. But I don't expect that to be the issue. When I hire a guy to come in and be the defensive coordinator, I want them to come in and coach their system and their style and their scheme. And it's the same, you know, with staff or with whatever. So when I first started talking to Nate, when I thought we may be looking for a defensive coordinator, the first thing I did was I probably watched 6 games of them play. I'd known Nate from Wofford in the past, and I'd always been intrigued. And then when he went to Appalachian, they had played really good defense. And with no disrespect to Wofford, but at the time when I was at Georgia Southern, you know, the Georgia Southerns, Appalachian States, and Furmans of the world had far better players than the Woffords and the other teams we played, but yet they were still very competitive. They always were sound. You turn the tape on. The big question for me on defense sometimes is when I turn the tape on and I watch it, can I try to figure out what they're doing? And if I can't figure out what they're trying to do, then heaven help us. I mean, so you could see they had a system. I'd watch them play Clemson on tape through the years here. I'd watch them play Georgia. I'd watch them play teams that we play. And even though the personnel might have been different, you could see the method to the madness, or you could see what they were trying to accomplish and what they were doing and how they were coached and that kind of thing. So I fully expect him to run his scheme and to do that. Certainly I'll be watching, and we'll sit down during the week and I'll have my suggestions within his scheme. But no, I'm not going to micromanage or tell anybody what to do. If that were the case, there'd be no use to hire somebody, and truthfully, I wouldn't want anybody that would work for me that would do that. I think that they have to have confidence in what they're doing, and I have the full confidence in him. It's like we were talking about, I was telling somebody the other day on the staff hires or whatever, and I was telling Nate, he's having a great deal of input on these staff hires, and I asked him to interview our guys that were here. I wouldn't ask anybody to come be the cook if they couldn't buy some of the groceries. So certainly it's like that's where we're at. My chips are in on Nate. I'm here to support him and help him get his system in and that kind of thing, certainly not to micromanage.
Ken Seguir with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Welcome to Georgia Tech.
Thank you, Ken.
I'm curious, you mentioned, you know, being at places, probably Wofford in particular, that you weren't, you were kind of at disadvantages recruiting-wise because of academics and so forth, and kind of developing your scheme with an emphasis on speed and being willing to sacrifice height or quickness for, you know, other things. Is that kind of a concession to not always getting who you want, or is that just something you really believe in? This is how I want to play, or kind of a mixture of both?
No, I think you'll always take the very best player. That's what I'm looking for. But defining who that very best player is, oftentimes is up for discussion. You know, and I think that I've had success with guys that had an intense desire to play hard, to get off blocks, chase the football, and come back and do it again consistently. Those are the guys that I enjoy coaching, guys that process things quickly, that can determine run or pass during the play fast or even before the snap. Those are the guys that win an awful lot of football games for me. So whether someone else is recruiting a guy I'm certainly not going to back away from somebody that I want just because they're being recruited by somebody else. But likewise, I'm not going to pass on a guy that I can see that can execute our techniques, that'll play hard, just because because he's not the beauty queen,
Let me see if I can help you with this recruiting, because it's the same thing. A news flash. We're not opposed to recruiting 5-star players here. I mean, for the dude who tweeted me last night that you're supposed to try to play with 5-star players, okay. I think that you guys sometimes create this deal that we don't want to recruit these best players, that we just try to recruit guys that fit our system, which couldn't be further from the truth. Now, let me see. I'm trying to count all the 5-star players that came to Georgia Tech. Oh. But that doesn't mean you don't recruit them. But what you do is you try to have a system that you can win with that fits the guys that do come to Georgia Tech. Certainly, I'm watching the game last night. There was probably not very many guys on that field, including the quarterback from the University of Alabama, that we did not try to recruit. Okay? But there has to be a two-way street. They also have to want to come. So it's like we're going to recruit the very best players that we can get and put them into our system. The great thing about a system is that sometimes the system can function without all those guys. And I think that that's what you look to do. And I think that the system, while it's a defense as opposed to an offense, is that Nate runs has been very successful at a lot of places. And every offense or defense has a wrinkle. Every 3-4 defense is not the same. Every offense is not the same. Every spread offense in the gun is not the same. So that they all have their wrinkles. We ran a very similar defense at Georgia Southern my last 3 or 4 years there. Not quite like what Nate does. Probably didn't teach it quite like Nate does. There was differences. Just like there's a difference between what we do on offense and what an Army or a Navy does. There's differences. Or what Wofford does or what other people do. So they're all the same, but what you try to do is find a system that you can compete and win with the players that you recruit and that you have. And hopefully within that system, I think what Nate was trying to say, and I thought came across pretty clearly, is, okay, if there's a good player out there on the defensive line who's not 6'4" or 6'5", but he's still a good player, and we think he can do what we ask him to do within the system, we're not going to be afraid to recruit him because the other schools aren't.
I don't think I expressed my question very clearly. I was thinking out. I was saying, like, do you go to a system knowing that you want the best guys, but if you're not going to get them, you want a system that is going to kind of fit guys that aren't going to be the beauty queens? That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Do you start out saying, this is what I know, the speed and recognition are the things I want most, or is it that, because we won't always hit the 5 stars?
I know some guys that'll recruit guys that have the long arms and are tall, and sometimes those guys don't, might not play. That guy might not play as hard as a guy that I would want. So what I see on film matters the most. Whether he's a 6'5" guy or whether he's a 6'1" guy, what he does on film matters most to me. And if he's just a guy that in this defense, if all he does is take up space and hold offensive linemen from getting to the linebackers, that's not where we're going to be successful. I want guys that can move and attack, and speed, quickness, processing, all those things matter.
You said you've had a chance to maybe look at some of the guys thus far.
A little bit, yes.
There's a fairly large group at defensive tackle. I imagine you probably will be able to see some guys in that group that may fit better on the outside in your defense. Is that a correct assumption, or
I mean,
I think he's talking about end, playing end.
defensive end?
yeah, as far as that were playing tackle last
That
year. That
played,
might be
yeah, and then
ends.
the old defense in the 4-3.
Yeah, I'm still looking at that. Those are things that we're still evaluating. But yeah, there's some of those guys probably that were playing a 3 technique that could just as easily or be better at playing that defensive end for us. But determining exactly who they are, that's still a process right now.
Can you talk a little bit, I guess, about your terminology, like in terms of what you call different positions, or is there any special names, or like for your outside backers or whatever?
The nose is going to line up over the center. The ends are going to line up over the tackles. There is outside linebackers. It depends on how we play the outside linebackers, whether we play one into the boundary and one to the field, or whether we just play a left and a right. And that, again, as I complete the evaluation process, that's when I'll determine if I give those in particular names, like the Will linebacker is the inside linebacker to the weak side, the Mike to the strong side. And then our strong safety lines up to the field, free safety to the boundary, and then we'll look at the corners. And if I need to play with a boundary corner all the time and a field corner, I'll do that. But again, the evaluation process, revert back to that. And if I can just play left and right, that would be the best thing for me.
Coach, I'm curious, just in your conversations and due diligence, at what point or what kind of made you feel comfortable to say, okay, this is a person that I want to hire?
Well, I had done a lot of research from just watching tape, and I also had a lot of statistics from different defensive coordinators across. And I think, we'd talked on the phone briefly, but the first time we really talked at length, Nate came to the house, to my house, and we sat down and talked. And I had pretty much decided that if that meeting had gone well off all the research I'd done, that's the direction I wanted to go. I felt like it fit best for our program. And I was pretty comfortable right from the start. I mean, I don't know that I told him this, but one of the things that really struck home the first time we talked, and we were just talking in general, and I was talking about, I said a lot of the coaches talk about playing against 120 different formations and this, that, and the other, and every time a back moves, and it's this, that, and the other. And he kind of looked at me and he goes, well, it's either doubles or trips, right? And which is what I used to say all the time here. And it's like in my mind I thought, okay, I might be on to something here. So I think that we have, as a general rule, the same idea. I mean, my idea about playing defense, and I haven't coached over there in a long time, but I want guys to be unencumbered, play fast, know how to get lined up, run to the ball, and create some negative plays and have fun doing it. And I think that within this system, while there's certainly some intricacies and some techniques and there's other things, it's not quite that simple, but it fits kind of what I'm looking for overall. And I think that like I said, he has that background and the track record to show that he's gotten it done at different places. And when you watch the tape, you can see it. I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to watch the bowl game. This had already been done, but in my mind anyway. But watching them play Toledo, who I'd seen on tape this year against Miami, a pretty good offensive football team. And just the thing that was most impressive to me wasn't necessarily the fact they shut them out. Well, that's impressive. Was how hard the kids played and how fast they played and how, there was no question they knew where they were going and what they were doing because they were going 100 miles an hour. And that's the thing that appealed to me. I think that I think you have to have a system and you have to have a base and you have to have now does that guarantee? But that's the way I've always coached on offense. We have a system. And so we know what we want to do when this happens, and hopefully our kids know what to do if we're doing a decent job coaching.
We have 2 or 3 more questions.
I guess speaking along those lines, one of the things that kind of stood out over the last few years was that it seemed like there was a lot of tinkering to who you were playing each week versus maybe letting the guys sit back and play, and it seemed like confidence was maybe an issue at times as well.
Well, I'm not going to rehash the last few years on defense because we've had some good coaches. I have respect for our coaches that coached, and certainly they've done a good job. I want to talk about moving forward and getting this put in and moving and seeing how our kids play in this and what happens. And I think that they'll enjoy doing it. But it remains to be seen. It's like I say all the time. You can sit up here and talk and say what you want, whatever. But in 7 or 8 months, you got to line up and play. We'll see, right?
Anything else?
Chris, I imagine you recruited North Carolina extensively at App State. Is that something you plan to do keep going forward? I mean, obviously, I imagine you also some local responsibilities also, but is that something you feel good about bringing here?
Ken, right?
Yes, thank you.
I'm doing good. All right. Where I recruit is I guess that's up to coach to decide where I'm best at. I've recruited a lot of places over 27 years, so there's not many places I haven't recruited. But again, I guess the recruiting is one thing, and then getting guys on board as far as what we're doing from a scheme standpoint and evaluation standpoint and all that is important as well. So wherever they decide I'm going, that's where I'll go, and I've probably already been there.
Let me just hit on that recruiting one thing too, because what's going to happen with recruiting, and you're always looking to revamp and upgrade, and hopefully we're in the process of adding some people to our recruiting department and doing some things with that. But the recruiting part, there's some big misnomer out there that recruiting hadn't changed in 40 years other than social media and everybody has access to whatever. The way you do it is people have an area. They find players, they bring them back, the position coach watches them, and if they like them, then it comes up to me, and if I like them, and then that's the way we recruit. So it's not like, it's about relationships somewhat, and it's about knowing coaches or whatever, but you're not going to find guys who have coached for a long period of time that make it in this business who don't know how to recruit or whatever. It's like I've said before, it's amazing, what a good recruiter you are when you go to certain schools. You might not have been quite as good a recruiter. I think we look at last night, and that's a great example for Coach Saban, right? And not to take anything away from him, he's been outstanding. He's a lot better recruiter at LSU and Alabama than he was at Kent and Michigan State. I guess he just figured it out. Or maybe Alabama and LSU kind of recruit. I mean, you look, when's the last time the schools around here, there's certain schools who always have top recruiting classes, so every coach they've ever had must be a great recruiter. If they came over here to Atlanta, to Georgia State, they probably wouldn't be quite the recruiter. So I think that's blown totally out of proportion.
Coach, kind of somewhat along those lines, we announced today the 4 early enrollees, including the transfer from Ole Miss. If you could maybe talk a little bit about Jack DeFore and his.
Yeah, Jack's a young man that we recruited a few years ago out of Calhoun as an offensive lineman. We thought that he had good size, quickness, and could do some of the things that we wanted to do on the offensive line. And it became apparent to us that he had an interest in coming back closer to home, and so that's a good fit for us. With the things going on at Ole Miss, we can explore to see when he will be eligible or not, whether it would be next year or whatever, and certainly we'll do that. The other 3 guys are defensive guys who, come in. TK played at IMG, and he's been committed for a long time. We think he's an outstanding player. Certainly he'll have his opportunity in spring practice to see where he fits, as well as Jaquez and Charlie. Right now, we'll look and evaluate where Jaquez is certainly, we recruited him as a linebacker, and Charlie we recruited as a safety. So we'll see where they fit in Nate's scheme and go from there. But we're excited about all those guys. We think they're good additions and will be good players.
Anything else for Coach?
For tackle.
More than likely, but we'll wait and see. I mean, we'll get out in the spring and evaluate and see exactly where he fits. The goal for the offensive line is like everywhere. You're always trying to find the 7 or 8 or best players, and in a perfect world, you get to 10. So that way you could roll. I think that we should have more depth on the offensive line coming in than we've had in quite a while. We get Andrew Marshall back, who missed the year, who was hurt, who'd been a starter. We've got a pretty good class of kids that we redshirted, and then we've got 4 starters back. So that depth on the offensive line should be the best it's been in a while.
Keith, any attrition and any idea kind of what your number is for the second signing period right now?
I don't think we're going to have any more attrition, but you never know. It's possible, especially when you change things in the spring if somebody doesn't end up being where they want to be. Right now, we're probably looking to take 3 to 4 more guys in the second signing period, if it's the right guys.
Coach Johnson, Coach Woody, thank you. We appreciate you.
Thanks, fellas.